Welcome back to our classroom. Today I'm joined by Noam Gerstein, CEO and founder of Bina, a global accredited virtual school. Noam is a visionary in online education and shares insights on innovative teaching methodologies and educational technology. Welcome to our classroom.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I love being a student.
Well, I do too, and I'm looking forward to learning more, not just about Bina, but talking about online education. Obviously, it's a phenomenon in the day and age that we live in, and so
Mhm.
it's something that we need to continue to discuss and learn about. And
And
before
discover,
yeah, actually, definitely discover. But before I go any
actually.
further, where are you located?
So I'm in Berlin today. I've lived a very globish life and landed here, and I'm here for now and looking to see where next steps might take. Our educators, our students, and the team is spread all over the world, and so I've been very lucky to meet people from incredibly varied walks of life.
That's awesome. So we got a global episode going on here, right? Cross continent. And let's go ahead and just get started by you sharing a little bit about Bina. And we understand that Bina is pioneering the concept of precision education. Can you share how this approach works in practice? And especially for younger learners in different time zones and cultural contexts, I'm curious to hear you share about how younger learners are engaging in this approach and what's working for them and what's challenging for them.
So, I mean, we can start with like practicalities that just happen every day. So, and we can talk about why educate digitally and like what are the wonders and also what are the difficult aspect of the day to day that are still being crafted and that we can still work on. And I think those two are very interesting, especially for people here today. So it's a full schooling program. We teach all the subjects. We cover and exceed the UK standards, the US Common Core, the Australian standards, and the Canadian standards. And we can talk later a little bit about how we do that. We have up to 7 kids in a group. The children are 4 to 12 years old. We have 2 educators matched with each class, and they all definitely have some bi-weekly one-on-ones. We teach, like most schools, a little bit over 200 learning days a year. We have 4 quarters and 4 intakes. Which makes it very easy to transition to any kind of international school. We teach Monday through Friday, 5 hours of live, active, collaborative, real-time lessons, plus playgrounds on the both ends. And then we work very closely with the families. So it's real-time teacher feedback, direct messaging with all the families. We give like active kind of specificities and suggestions and other kind of support. We have ever adapting progress reports, and it's a very active and very charming global community. So this is kind of the daily. In many ways, it's a school. We have kids from different time zones studying together, from different places on a time zone studying together every day. So from the very north to the very south of by now 7 time zones. So it's very cute. For example, we're working on a project of building a house, and everyone collects materials from outdoors, and one builds an igloo, and the next boy builds a mud hut because they're in very different places and their daily lives are incredibly different. So it's a very global community and a global daily experience. So which alludes to different aspects of how life looks today, right? And if we think about like school or what school means as something that in many ways mimics a society or looks to practice being parts of society, then Bina is looking at the new nature of how humans interact today, and kind of looks to work with it and work towards doing that more fluently. Let's say that. So that's kind of the general kind of day to day. Some things about how we teach and why we teach like this. Of course, like why teach digitally? For several really good reasons. One is because you can focus resources on what matters most, which is for us keeping classes small, educators highly trained and compensated, and having material continuously update. So that's what we care about. And because our resources are not allocated to other things, where, no buildings and tables and chairs and other things, we can keep maintaining incredibly high quality in what we think matters most to education. So that's one. But then, of course, we can educate digitally because there are a lot of things that we can do in the digital realm that we cannot do in the physical realm. You can do the impossible, and the dangerous, and the expensive, and the impractical, right? Like, of course, we all want to fly planes today, and we also want to crash them. And we want to go underwater and look into the body of the octopus, and like a lot of things that we can do in the digital realm. So you can kind of think about, like, I guess you have an American crowd, so you can kind of think about magic school bus experiences on a day-to-day basis, just kind of the world we're heading towards. The other thing that we can do digitally and we cannot do in the physical realm is look at learning evidences in a much more detailed data, through a much more detailed data lens. So we can collect learning evidences and have discussions about them with students, with their educators, with their families, and with us, and just look at different excerpts of their work and their day and make decisions together. So, so that's the second aspect. Yeah, you want to ask a question?
Yeah. I'm wondering about the structure of the school day
Mm-hmm.
and how it, like, what consideration goes into the amount of screen time, and
Mm-hmm.
especially as I'm thinking about, like, all right, how my eyes sometimes get weary looking at a screen for a long period of time. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the learners, thinking about the teachers. So maybe you could help me understand
Yeah, of
how
course.
your school day is structured to
Mm-hmm.
address that concern.
Mm-hmm. So there are several different things. First of all, like most learning happens, we have breaks in between every class, and the length of the classes actually differ according to developmental phase of the students. But generally, like it's a 5-hour day that's broken into slots of usually up to 7 different pieces. During the learning, though, like,
7 different slots.
yeah, it depends on how developed the children are. So,
Sure.
like, the younger ones will have more. The older, as they grow older, they'll have longer stretches of time as we work with them on kind of their attention span. But even within a slot, and then obviously during breaks, we definitely make sure that they step away and do other things. But even within the slots, there are a lot of things that we can do because we teach digitally. So there's a lot of, so for example, they ask me, like, how do you keep the 4-year-old sitting? And it's like, most of them are not sitting. They're not in a classroom. They don't have to sit up straight. We have standing stations. We move around. There's a lot of movement in the day-to-day. So this is one. The second, I mean, during a lesson, we'll make sure that there are a lot of exercises and that are roaming, or like more physical exercises. So for example, example from this morning. So they're learning about I don't know, our very, very youngest kids are learning letter sounds, right? And so they're learning about b, okay? And so you have like the clock is running and you need to find 5 items from around the house that starts with a b, okay? And so, they're always, and of course, we still have to absolutely work on like hand-eye coordination and movement strategies and other things like that. So we make sure that they move around as the day progresses.
That's
The other thing that is kind of interesting and maybe important is an average child spends over 5 hours in front of a screen anyway, but they have also been sitting in a classroom throughout the day. And so our suggestion here is to ensure that screen time is work time. It's from very early ages connected with hard work. And that's what we do on screens. And everything else is outdoors and physical activity. And we work very closely with our families to ensure that this is the screen time they get, quote unquote, and that the rest is as away from screens as possible.
I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier. I think you used the term adventures, maybe not, but you were talking about like, if they want to explore something underwater or they want to, you know, go do something else or blow something up. And I might be paraphrasing a little bit, but that was more or less the gist of it, right? That,
For
this
sure.
exploration happening and an adventure
Yeah.
happening. And so I'm interested to know what strategies you use to maintain engagement and ensure that students find joy in virtual learning.
So we do several things, and we're developing some new things that I can share. But right now, we
And you gave me
do.
one example now in terms of like the letter sounds and finding items in the household that
Yeah.
represent those letter sounds. But yeah, I do want to hear a
No,
bit
this is just
more.
a small physical activity to make sure that they step away. But so we do several things that are kind of big chunk things, right? So one is we teach thematically. So every month and a half, everything they learn has to do with one big topic. And those big topics are biomes. So for example, desert or tundra or marine or freshwater or forest. So everything they learn, their math, their history, their literature has to do with that topic or is originated from cultures that are around those places. We do that for a really, for a semi, so we call it, it solves a problem because we have kids from different places and from incredibly different points of view, cultural views, it allows us to change the lens or change the point of view of the learning every month and a half. But also, thematic learning means that they obtain, retain, and extract knowledge and skills way more easily because it's contextualized, right? So these are the themes. So that's a one kind of larger scale strategy that we use, and it's of course like, let's say we're learning how to count, so of course it's dolphins, okay, and so on and so forth. The second thing that we do is make sure that they apply what they're learning. So every month and a half, children create a project that is about showcasing what they're learning throughout that biome. So unlike many PBLs, which is project-based learning, there's several requirements. So it's a bit more structured than in many cases. So, and the requirements are, one, it's always connected to an SDG, so a social development goal. And they need to start with defining a problem that they're keen on solving, or they're keen on researching. So it starts with a problem. The second thing is that every learning that they acquire during the biome, they have to showcase in that project. So let's say we learned about graphs, for example. they're going to have to use a graph in the end of the project, which means that they need to wear their applicable hat on whenever they're learning something new. So we want to make sure that they understand how to use their knowledge, right? So that's another thing that keeps everyone awake. And then, of course, like we can, because we're so small and we can adjust so easily to children's interests and desires, however, while maintaining, hitting whatever they need to hit in their developmental stage. So that's also important. We can change the content and the path to their interest while for example, like the dolphin, let's say Anna loves dolphins. Of course, we're going to count dolphins, right? But even if she doesn't really want to count, at least we're counting dolphins, right? So there's a lot of flexibility, and we can maintain this flexibility in a very, like, as we grow, with using some pretty cool tech. And another very important aspect, of course, all the learning is active and collaborative and real time with teachers and students. So we never leave a child in front of a screen doing a thing. That's definitely not what we think education is about. Education is about being together and collaborating. And so because we spend a quarter of every day on social emotional learning, and it is about contributing to the group community and to the school community, kids are engaged because it's part of their, that's their circle, right? And we work with them on how engagement looks like and how do they apply themselves emotionally into the social situations that they're in.
Can you give me an example of what that looks like for y'all?
Totally. So for example, we work on collaborative skills, right? So let's say this biome project is a group of 3 and 4 students, right? And then we need to be very explicit on how do we decide a direction in a way that's respectable, in a way that's collaborative. How do we debate? How do we use reasoning together? How do we agree on work distribution, right? And those are not implicit, so it's not like we assume that they are going to do the project and understand how to do it. It's very explicit. We actually work, and that's part of our expectations, to see what tools from the collaboration toolboxes are they using.
Mm. I want to, because I think part of what you're teaching, what you're modeling, the intentions around being explicit on SEL matters, on social emotional learning, are extremely important. And it's bringing to mind another extremely important area or theme that crosses over with social emotional learning, which is the cultural inclusivity. And you mentioned, Bina is a global program. You have kids on all different time zones, all different regions, different countries. And so I'm wondering how y'all are fostering that, how you are working to integrate your students into this online community in a way where they're expanding their awareness of other people groups, other perspectives, right? You mentioned that you have individuals in the community that have all different types of perspectives. And so, yeah, how are y'all leading in this particular charge as it relates to integrating the cultural diversity and awareness and connectivity and it's especially given that, depending on the regions folks are coming from, like there might be some vast differences um that bring some tensions into the community, maybe.
100%. 100%. I think so. so we work on environmental, social, and personal awareness throughout our curricula. This is what we care about. So the ability to talk about our feelings and state our boundaries, and also actively listen and give attention and respect to another. There's some aspects of this model that lend themselves uniquely well to that type of inclusivity, because we don't have a group that's dominating the environment, unlike almost anywhere else, right? We don't have a majority from anywhere. So the basic assumption is everyone is a total other. And that's incredibly powerful and incredibly beautiful. The other thing that we see is, of course, like, from and as you have very rightfully mentioned, we have very different mindsets and incredibly different families, and sometimes those collide on the parent level. However,
Not surprising.
kids do beautiful work in overcoming that. And so you'll see kids from different sides of a war zone becoming best friends.
That was one of the scenarios I had in mind, actually.
And kids like with, for example, a child with a very, very religious background and a child with like a very different type of family becoming best friends, and walking the families through understanding and acceptance and interest and curiosity to how other people live. And so there's like and that's I would claim like potentially like the most exciting and important aspect of our work. I just spoke to my mom the other day, and she lives in Brazil in the middle of a rainforest, which is amazing. Also, she was saying that she had some conversations with her neighbors, and they're all like, why don't you just send her to like the local school? And she told them, you guys don't understand. My daughter has a global network from the age of 5. Do you know how like valuable that is? Do you understand how immensely important that is? She sees and understands humans from many different places, and she's best friends with them. And so like this is one of the other reasons that I find like digital education is lending itself to doing marvels in the world, right? Because we're going to count on them to make it better, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The children of the future.
And so our job is to contextualize them, right? They count on us to give them context. So,
yeah. Talking about the future, what do you think the future of early childhood and elementary education looks like, and how can we break down traditional boundaries and make virtual learning more accessible and impactful?
So I actually think that in its nature, digital learning is more accessible. Because what you can do is extrapolate or like promote incredibly high quality of education, which is right now offered in very tiny amounts of the global population, if at all, by the way, and offer it everywhere. And that's Bina's vision. This is what we're working towards. But so several things. I think the schooling system as we know it has done, from the Prussian era throughout today, has done tremendous things for humanity, including ensuring like high levels of literacy and gorgeous work, and that's all very nice. It was built with a completely different set of resources in mind, and with a different set of goals in mind. It's like
outdated.
The system was designed to create soldiers for the Prussian army, and it was copied and modified in many ways, but still, like, it has a design in mind, and so because we have a completely different set of resources right now, and also pretty different goals. Like I wouldn't want my children to become soldiers in the Prussian army if I could avoid it. Then it does call for a renewed design or of what we understand as a school. The other kind of aspect of this is, I mean, throughout history and throughout geographies, schools are mimicking society. So if you live in a hunter-gatherer society, for example, like you'll hunt and gather and like hit trees and hit trees and hit trees, and eventually you'll hit the deer. So we simulate children into the society and eventually have them become leaders of that society, right? And they can modify it as they please, right? And so how do we simulate children in the society a lot of us live in right now, which has heavy digital aspects, and we do that mindfully and also carefully, because there's plenty careful to be in those environments. And so when you think about changing a system, there are two kind of paths to go about it. One is innovate from within, and amazing work has been done in education in the last years for sure. Brilliant educators create brilliant content, like amazing work. But the other path is build a parallel system that is so compelling and so successful and so joyous that the mainstream cannot not have it. I'm putting my eggs on the second basket. And so I think that what we'll see like in the future are several things. One is I think there's going to be heavy shift into respect of talent and teach and educators' talent. And the work is going to be creating everything we can possibly do to support them. This is one. I think content is going to be immersive and generated according to where the kids are and their interest. And I think it would be done real time in multiplayer game. And this is what we're building, right? It's a multiplayer game experience. It's very cool. And so like, let's say you're an educator and I can go back to the adventure on the octopus, and we're doing let's say we're doing a project on the octopi, and we discover that their blood is blue, which is mind-boggling. Okay, so we can enter their bloodstream and like expand and look at like what their blood is made of and why that may be blue. Okay, that's exciting. So that's one thing that I think we're going towards, or at least we're building very fast towards. Second thing I think is that we will be able to move assessment from periodic tests to a continuum. Everything they do counts into their assessment, which is something, again, you can only do digitally, and I find it incredibly exciting. And from a like somewhat subjective to an objective, or closer to objective. So by extracting micro-learning evidences and placing it in their learning taxonomy. That's another thing that I am very excited about. So we will have super high resolutions regarding what students know, what they can do into which depth, both with skills and knowledge, but also with larger conceptual grasp and disposition, so like how they approach a problem. So I think we will be able to move it from mainly teachers kind of doing weird labor that everyone hates, into having a very broad map of suggestions with evidences, and the teachers coming and basically challenging not only teachers, students, and parents, coming to those evidences and challenging the system if it made decisions that we disagree with. So that would be the main event. So I want to see Anna saying, I can count to 100. System says, no, you can't. Mom says, I've seen her count to 100. Teacher says, I've never seen it happen. And then, we all look at what happened in the last lesson and decide what we actually think together. So the closer, and which is another thing that we will be able to do very soon, I think, the closer. How would we like judge if the system works or not? The closer the understanding of where Anna is with her learning between Anna, her family, her educator, and the system are, the better we do as a system, because we're closer to the truth because it lies in between.
Mhm.
So that's another thing that I think we'll see. I do think that at scale, we can do smart matching. So kids, let's say, I don't know, okay, this morning, I had a chat with Julian. Julian is an awesome kid, and is in third grade, like an equivalent. Bina is not exactly grades, but like an equivalent of the US third grade
Okay.
literacy and history, but the math, ninth grade. Just
Wow.
just brilliant, but like a lot of anomalies in development. It's usually in one area, not in everything.
Right,
Uh,
right.
and so right now, as we're still like growing, there are not a lot of kids like this. But in the future, we would be able to put Julian in a class with more kids where this is their disposition, right? It would and move and run them along, right? And move them forward where they're strong and move them forward also where it's not their thing. So those types of things, and we can do smart matching also emotionally, and smart matching to educators. This is another thing that I think we would be able to do as one grows. I also think that we'll start seeing things like hubs. So it could be a co-working place, an office, a cultural institution, a grandma's hut somewhere, anything, okay, where kids are minded. They come together in the multiple age space. They still, smell armpits and play ball and like have breaks together, very important things. But they're recipients of the highest quality of education offered in the world, and learn with kids from all over the world. So we'll see we'll see more hybrid models where like what used to be schools become become community centers with potentially senior people or youth doing activities with children, and making sure that the community is active, and remain with very, very high and accountable education system that is offered in the place. So those are kind of my predictions, and also smarter people from me have said that the only way to predict the future is to make it.
Well, it'd be interesting to see how things develop because there's so much happening as it relates to technology, and it's advancing quite quickly, right? Evolving at a rate that, it's almost like we can't keep up. And yet at the same time, it's important for us to maintain like that human touch and that human connection that I find to be invaluable. And while technology is great and having virtual spaces and opportunities to connect with folks around the globe is great. Um, there's just something about being in person with someone, right? And able to like have that face-to-face contact that I think our learners need. So I'd be encouraged to see these hybrid models. And I know there are some out there, but I'd be encouraged to see more of them that are connecting folks intergenerationally and across other differences. So thanks
Mhm.
for sharing. Uh,
I
I-
um, I actually think that Gen A's, which are the ones we're educating right now, are going to need like in their social emotional toolboxes, um, tools made for in-person and tools made for the digital. And I do think that the wisest and maybe the most important technologies that are built are about making sure that the human interaction is at the core and at the center, and everything else facilitates humans to interact more and more truthfully and more candidly, and be busied, be busied with everything else significantly less. So when we design, and I think those are the great education designs, are how do we make sure that when an educator has any time that an educator has, they are deeply engaged with their students and kind of not anything else, right?
Mm.
Every moment that a child has, they're busied with collaborating, with actively listening, right? How do we design for that and use technology that will run on the site to facilitate deeper connections and make sure that they encounter friction? Like until now, we've designed technology to avoid friction. So how do we actually make sure that there is friction and they have to deal with it together? Like,
Mm.
and what does that look like? So.
Mm. Yeah. Well, as we wrap up, if you had an opportunity to have lunch with anybody dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oh gosh. Um,
This question always gets people.
yeah, it's a good one. I'd be interested to meet a lady named Berta Pappenheim.
Hmm. Who's that?
I mean, it's interesting to meet a lot of people, but like today, if you ask me, so she was Anna Osho, so she was like the first patient of Freud,
Oh.
and there is a lot of uh, suggestions that many of his insights actually were not his. Because she
I
came and just forced him to take care of her the way she wanted to be taken care of.
wow.
Um, and then she overcame whatever she had to overcome and opened a very fascinating orphanage
Hmm.
uh, and did phenomenal educational work and had quite shocking insights into human psyche. So today, that lady.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a first. That's a first. Learn something new. That's awesome. And what is your message of encouragement to those that are listening?
I think humans have agency way more than they assume they do. And it's not only that humans have agency on their own, but the ability to come and ask for help and for support makes it like it's not a times two. Um, and I can't find more, it's hard for me to think about more exciting facts than this. Our ability to change ourselves and our surroundings and to positively impact the world around us is immense. And the best way to do it is with other people. So, yeah,
Exercise your agency.
exercise your agency because you got much of it.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. So, Noam, for those that want to learn more about you, about Bina, where can they follow you?
So, first of all, Bina has a website. It's bina.school. Come visit us there. Second, I love humans very much. And if you're interested in what we do, if you want to learn more, if you want to chat with me, if you think I can support you or your community or your work or your thoughts or your friends, ping me. I'm Noam at bina.school. I'm incredibly approachable and I love helping others, as I've just mentioned. If you are an educator and you're looking for work and you want to build with us, don't hesitate. HR@bina.school. And if you're a family that wants to join us, please apply because it is just amazing. It is the cutest experience, and how effective everyday learning is unparalleled. So come visit. Of course, we're on Instagram and on Facebook and on all the other places. It's all good. Bina.school.
Noam, thank you for your time. Thanks for sharing. We appreciate the insight and certainly looking forward to not just expanding in the online education space, but continuing to exercise our agency as you just shared. So we appreciate you and look forward to learning more about Bina.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute delight.